Hi, welcome back. So we are in chapter 2, technical setup, the second outline that is to discuss front-end and back-end database principles. Well, when it comes to terminology-wise, such as a front-end and a back-end, perhaps this most likely always accompanied with the web development business. However, I wanted to bring these two terminology in particular to share with you the general idea using the exact same terminology, which are actually could be compatible with any kind of product you're trying to design. Now, essentially, if we look at any kind of a product that represents a solution for a certain problem, well, the options that we have, desktop application. The second option, I could say, is the mobile phone applications. And finally, you have a web applications. Well, these are the available options, to design a certain product, and this is where the actually user can interact with the application as a solution. Now, I'm disregarding other options which could be installed on a machine, or CTL, or some sort of robot. But I'm talking about any kind of product or application, most likely that are in the form of a software or a game whatsoever. Now, when we want actually to look at the difference between these three different ways of designing the product, I'm not talking about the solution. The solution is the main focus of your research. You have to know what kind of solution, once it's done and everything, how we would like to outcome that solution and on which form. So here are the possible, let me say, physical devices that could make that available. Now, in this book, we are actually intent to design a desktop application. And desktop application developers usually build these applications that are used specifically on laptop and desktop. And these applications are usually built for different operating systems such as Linux, Microsoft, Windows, or Mac operating system. Technically speaking, desktop application must be downloaded and installed on the local PC because they can function without an internet connection. Personally, I would look at a desktop application with its own advantages, such as the network independence. You are completely independent once you have a desktop application. Also, the safety and the confidentiality, which you will enjoy if that product is installed within the premises where you have control over. Also, easier user control. What I want to say that many people maybe misunderstand that desktop applications, it works as a single app. Well, that's true to some extent, but basically, if you install only your app, which is going to be a standalone app, it's fine. It could be installed on the local machine and that's it. It does not have to connect to anything. But also there is a kind of a desktop application, which is a client server. Actually, still the server itself, which over the main interface service for the app, and the client that are connected actually to that server, and all of which can be connected on a local network, a kind of a design that you have to understand. Now, our application is not going to be exactly as a server and client, although the second application for this project, it's going to have a kind of a server client application where the application, the main application, will be installed to, for example, do analysis on the stock market, but at the same time, it will be connected to another server, which is providing a client or this server with a streaming of a real-time service. So this is also a potential design, but the basic idea that the main application, it is a desktop application, it should be installed on the desktop. Now, before we close down on this session, I would like to walk you through 4 important blocks that actually every desktop or in general development app as a product have to be actually within. We have discussed them in a general, but maybe here is much more technically speaking, are clearly been stated. First of all, the analysis status, where you have to make sure the requirement analysis are there for your desktop application or web or mobile application. And of course, you need the report review, where you have all the information cleared by discussion with the stakeholders and everything, and of course the requirements have been clarified. And then you need the design, where you have to make sure the data model review is clear. Data coming from where, because we are dealing here with AI model, so data is very, very important to be considered as the core main element for successful actually app at the end or product. Of course, you look also at the functional process or the flow chart, how it's going to work. And finally, you can make like a simple prototype to show the particular flow. And of course, you start with development by choosing the module programming, the database, and the development process or life cycle we discussed. You can include agility if you like, whatsoever. And of course, the conversion of the data. Most of the time, your data won't be actually streamed in a rational or structured way, so you have to make sure this is a mechanism also you might consider. And of course, the testing, and finally the deployment, including the installation, the testing, documentation, etc. Now, in our workflow, we wish to design actually our main product, which is going to be some kind of a project, let's say a project A. And all the requirement of this project in terms of the solution itself, it will be actually locally been developed. I have installed the database locally on the same machine. However, or you could even take the same idea, maybe the database could be completely independent on another server on the network, just you need an access. To this end, on the second project, I have created another server, which is going to be an FTP server. It's going to be streaming data. And this client, in this case, is our desktop application. I have just created a mechanism to connect to this FTP server. Well, before we close down, just get back to the two terminology I have started with, and that is the front end and the back end terminologies. Now, front end represent the meaning of a GUI, graphical user interface, where it represents number of widgets such as buttons, labels, whatsoever. Those widgets, what is the customer or the client will be interacting with. That's why it represents the front end. This is what the user see. Now, once the user requests anything by interacting with this widget or with this interface, of course, the GUI will be sending that request to the back end, and the back end yet to make kind of a response after it handled that request and get back to the user with the request that have been made. Now, this is the process, and this is the general idea of front end and a back end. Now, as I have said before, usually these terminologies are only used in form of web development. However, this is a valid thing to understand with any kind of software development, regardless what kind of a platform we are talking about. Now, that was all actually what you need to understand in order to be ready to start the execution of our project. Next, actually, we'll be looking at the project setup and essentials in order to prepare the tools that we need to design our applications. That's exactly what we'll be doing next. I will see you then.